Y'all, Jones Dairy Farm, located in Fort Atkinson, is a standout. They do premium meat manufacturing, making dry-aged bacon, naturally smoked hams and Canadian bacon, all-natural sausage, and a new no antibiotics ever chicken and pork meatballs. It's a 7th-generation family-owned and operated farm who's been making breakfast better since 1889. Learn more at jonesdairyfarm.com. That's jonesdairyfarm.com. Madison Public Library connects us to the world, to information, and to each other. September is Library Card Sign-Up Month, so it's the perfect time to get your very own Madison Public Library card. Already have a card? You can renew it this month and visit the library website for a list of 30 things you can do with your Madison Library card, one for every day of September. Visit madpl.org or stop into any Madison Public Library to get started.
Today on CityCast Madison. It's Thursday, so of course we're dishing on Madison's food scene. And it's harvest season, and with our local farm scene, you do not want to miss out on the best fall flavors. That's why we're revisiting our conversation with food writer and former farmer Lauren Rudersdorf about what this bounty has to offer and what recipes you can whip up this season. It's Thursday, September 12th. I'm executive producer Haley Sperling, in for Bianca Martin, and here's what Madison's talking about.
Lauren, hello.
Hello.
So you are a food writer and food blogger who highlights local ingredients. You also ran a veggie farm for years. I want to peek into your fridge. What's good this week?
Well, it's very full. That's the running joke. Anytime we have friends over, they're like, hey, can I put some beer in your fridge? And I'm like, no, why would you think there's space in there? There's like 7 watermelons and the produce drawers are overflowing. Like, there's no room for beer. That's a different fridge altogether.
Yeah, duh.
Come on. Who do you think I am? The fridge is looking good. It is like the best season of the year for food, in my opinion. Like, it's a little rainy today, so I know like they're coming to a close, but we're in our garden. We've got like peak tomato, peak watermelon. Like, we just pulled all of the winter squash out of the field. We've been preserving, for weeks, if not months. And it's just a really, really tasty time. Like, there's a little bit of everything available.
Oh my gosh. One of my favorite pictures is the first time I signed up for a CSA, and it was just full like heaven bounty. And it was about this time of year. It's a beautiful thing. I've seen your Instagram. You've got Superwoman vibes.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Do you ever feel like there's just like not enough time in our lives today to make a good home cooked meal?
You know the answer to that. Like, oh my gosh, especially in September, because I would say that because we were farmers, because we just love food. My husband and I, like, that's a thing we bonded over. That's like one of our passions. I know we cook more than like the average American. And it's a huge priority in our life. And we still don't always feel like we have time to do it. Like, we're not making a home cooked meal every night, because that just like, it takes all of your time. We do a lot of like batch cooking little things on weekends, or making huge pots of things when we can, because even as someone who's obsessed with food and loves food, it can feel like a grind. Like, you pick up your kids from daycare, you get home, you make a meal, you clean it up, and it's bedtime. And you're like, wait a second, what happened to like my entire night? So you have to like live that balance of like cooking really well, being okay with takeout here and there, eating less well other days, being fine with that too. It's like, for me, it's very much a balance of like enjoying a lot of good food, but still like living my life, because you got to live your life too. But September is kind of another story. We're like full on tomato preservation over here. So I don't think I have a life outside of my kitchen, really. Like, I got home from vacation, harvested 80 pounds of tomatoes, and was like, let's go. Let's get as much of this going as we can.
What are some of your favorite like quick and easy weeknight dinners? Like, just getting food on the table, after a busy day.
Well, Yeah, absolutely. The best thing I would say about this season is like soups. Soups are your best friend because you can throw we aren't vegetarian, but we love to eat a lot of veggies. I'm sure that's just our CSA background. I love to eat as many vegetables as I possibly can and not have it take hours to prep. And soup is kind of the best for that. You just chop a bunch of stuff up and you throw it in a pot and you let it simmer and you can do other things and it's delicious. So I don't know, some of my favorite soups. I love, again, tomatoes. I can't not talk about tomatoes. Like I love fresh tomato soups right now. They're so easy. Tomato soup is like extra easy because there's not that much chopping involved. You just throw a bunch of tomatoes in a pot.
You can just cook them down.
Yeah, you just cook them down. Like add some herbs, whatever you're feeling, oregano, basil, some chicken broth.
Oh my goodness. We're in cozy fall girl season. Fall person season. Everyone's included.
Yes. I don't know. It's a funny shift. I went on vacation for the first 2 weeks of September, which I never got to do when I was a farmer. It was wonderful. But I came back and the season did totally change. Like we left and we were in like, I feel in summer, I eat a lot of fresh salads, like a lot of like cucumber salads and roasted beet salads and tomato with burrata and gazpacho and pasta salads with tons of veggies. And I'm really feeling that. And I got home and I was like, ooh, I get to like roast everything soup all of a sudden, like warm flavors. Like, yeah, it was really like a kind of fun shift to come home to because I feel like by the end of summer, you're kind of like, you're ready for the fall flavors. You really are ready to dive in. So we're roasting a lot of stuff right now. We feel like we're roasting a lot and we're making a lot of soup is kind of like the theme in our household.
Like what kinds of soup?
My all-time favorite is called Cabbage Patch Soup. That recipe is on my blog, The Leek and the Carrot. It's tomatoey, of course, because like I'm saying, everything I'm doing right now is tomatoey, but it's like a whole head of cabbage, some peppers are sauteed with some onions. Then you throw the cabbage in, you throw the tomatoes in, and you just let it like wilt down, cook down. I usually put ground venison in it because my husband's a hunter and we always have a lot of ground venison in our freezer. And then you add a little chili powder and brown sugar at the end to just, I don't know, something about cabbage being a little sweet. It is so good. It's not a pureed soup. It's just literally like wilted cabbage and like a tomato broth. It's delicious. It's really good. Really good.
You got to cook up that cabbage with some brown sugar. I love it. That sounds good. That sounds really good.
It's good. It's like my mom used to make it when I was growing up and I just loved it, kind of ran with it, turned it into our own thing. And that is a winter staple in our house because all those things like preserve really well and I can't get sick of it. My husband gets a little sick of it. I cannot get sick of it.
I didn't hear that. I'm sorry about that. And you said that you're roasting a lot right now. Like what's your approach to food prep?
Yeah, that's a great question. As I've gotten older, as we had a child, it's gotten simpler, which I really like. I used to be one of those people who was like, make a creative meal every night. And it was really fun, but I don't really have time for that anymore. And so I definitely have fallen into this pattern of like repetition of core meals that really work for me. So like every week we're usually making a soup. Even in, summer, maybe we're doing a gazpacho. And then, we're usually doing like a pasta every week. In summer, it's got a ton of like sauteed or fresh vegetables in it. In winter, it's more of like a cheesy, creamy, using what's in the freezer kind of situation. But then my one like really big staple, I would say year round is, I don't know if you call them grain bowls or grain salads or what exactly, like rice bowls, exactly what you'd call them, but something where I can have like a carby base. So it can be like a local grain. Like I love like rye berries or spelt berries from Meadowlark Organics. Like that's a really cool ingredient where you can get like a almost rice texture, like a really hearty grain, but it's also like it's like grown locally and it's made locally, which is really sweet. So I'll cook up a grain of some kind. Sometimes it's rice, sometimes it's quinoa, like whatever you kind of have a feel for. And then again, in summer, we're doing a ton of fresh veggies, maybe just diced, maybe like a slaw with a little simple dressing. In fall or winter, we're doing more roasting for those veggies because you've got like carrots and beets, you've got all these root crops, you've got winter squash, you've got Brussels sprouts. And so for me, I love to roast because again, it's that simplicity. It's like, yeah, it takes a little while to prep it, but then you just throw it in the oven and ignore it completely for an hour. And it's great and it comes out and it's caramelized and it's so good. And so you can pair veggies with local grains or whatever grains you can get your hands on. And that makes like a really great foundation for a dish. And then you can add kind of whatever if you need protein, you can add a piece of salmon, you can add some steak, you can add whatever, some shredded chicken from a chicken you roasted earlier in the week. You can add avocado, but you can kind of like riff with this.
Some garbanzo beans.
Yes. Like get some protein, get a ton of veggies, get a carb kind of base. And then I just make a sauce again with whatever. Like sometimes we just do a mayo sauce because why would you not make like a spicy mayo? But other times you can blend a bunch of herbs up and turn that into like a oily, wonderful kind of dressing. And we do that a lot, like really a lot. It makes great lunches, makes great dinners. I like to do that on the weekend, and I can make a bunch of kind of like batched components. And then you can throw it together different ways throughout the week. If you're like, okay, actually I'm over the garbanzo beans, like give me an avocado instead. Or okay, actually now I need a piece of salmon. Like you can play with the flavors and play with the combos, eat from it for multiple days, not get sick of it. Like that's definitely a hack that I lean on heavily.
So you keep them like separate in the fridge? Like you keep them separate so you can mix and match so they're not like...
Exactly. And I would say that's probably my biggest food prep tip is that I keep a lot of things separate in the fridge because I'm very... Like I like texture in my food. Like I don't want it all to turn into like one mushy thing.
I feel like I haven't internalized this lesson somehow. So I'm like, oh, I could keep it separate.
It's a hard lesson to learn. I've done it over many years of like eating mushy foods and being like, oh, I should have like kept the peanuts over there. Why did I put the peanuts with the kale in the fridge? That's not good. So we often keep like I do keep things separate. And then you add the dressing like when it's time to eat your lunch. You can like build the bowl for your lunch. Like it's going to keep fine for a day, but I do tend to keep the components separate so I can kind of like play with it a little bit more. That feels more fun to me.
What's new from Apple? There's the new iPhone 16 Pro, built for Apple Intelligence. And it comes with the all-new camera control, giving you an easier way to quickly access your camera tools. The new Apple Watch Series 10 has our biggest display and our thinnest design ever. And this? It's the sound of active noise cancellation, now available on one of 2 new AirPods 4 models. So quiet. Check out all of the new products and new features at apple.com. You can even buy yourself something new. See apple.com for product availability updates. Apple Intelligence coming this fall.
I'm really glad you brought up a grain bowl because I feel like it's one of those things that are also out. If I really feel like eating healthy and I go get something out, it's probably going to be a grain bowl. So like, it's just like you can make them yourself pretty easily and like get that bang for your buck at home.
Yeah. Well, and it is the thing I'll say, like you're saying, when I think most people, people love Forage Kitchen. We all love Forage Kitchen because you can go and you can customize your own grain bowl right there or your own salad bowl and not have to like, I don't know, work that hard. But that's why I tend to batch so many things because it's like, if I'm going to go through the effort to make a grain bowl, I want to eat it 6 times. And I want there to be some pick and choose options so I don't get bored with it, but I can still eat it many days in a row because otherwise, yeah, you're not going to want to make like 6 components and eat it once. That sounds horrible. That's a lot of work.
Calm down. You mentioned kale, and kale is one of these guys that I absolutely love. And like, it feels like it might take a lot of work. Like, I don't even know where to begin with kale, except for that I'm not very successful with including it, but I want to be because I like it. So my question for you is like, do you have to massage it for hours? Like how do you make kale good? Like what's happening with kale?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Good question. I love kale. Again, I'm sure that is like my veggie farmer roots showing because every farmer loves kale because it's insanely abundant. Like you never don't have enough kale ever. Like there's always so much of it. And so I think for me, I started cooking with it a lot when it was just like, oh my gosh, we need something for dinner. I want some greens. Okay, there's plenty in the field. I'll just go harvest them and bring it home and I have to figure out what to do with it. So it's kind of fun learning to cook like as a veggie farmer because you have a ridiculous amount of abundance. But sometimes we were CSA farmers. We would have an abundance of like, I don't want to say the bad stuff, but like the stuff we've already given to the CSA members 6 times that's still in our field that someone's got to eat. So like I kind of had to learn to use things that maybe other people didn't love. And I now get like teased at Edible Madison because I think I've developed 3 kale salad recipes since I've been like recipe developing there. And they're like, okay, Lauren, like cool it. Like give us a salad with another green. But I really
Not a chance.
Kale for life.
Not from me.
So there are 3 really good kale salad recipes on the Edible Madison website. But I don't massage kale. I have. It's fine. I know a lot of people who swear by that. I know a lot of farmers who swear by it. I want to say I'm a lazy cook. People would probably laugh if they heard that because they know how I cook. But like I do try to be pretty efficient. My favorite way to eat kale is in raw form. But what I've seen to work really, really well is you do a pretty heavy dressing. Like it's a heavy green. It's not lettuce. If you put more dressing on it, it can stand up to that. Like you can put a rich, heavy, creamy dressing on it that's really good. And you let it sit for a few hours.
And it absorbs it?
Yeah. Like I put kale in the category of like almost cabbage, where it's like, it's not quite as hearty, but it's similar. So, like when you make a coleslaw, you dress it and like, ideally you eat it like a few hours later. Like you can eat it right then, but if you let it sit in the fridge, like it starts wilting down. And like, especially if that dressing has a good amount of like salt and pepper in there, like it's and maybe something a little sweet, it's going to like be breaking down those fibers. So this is another one of those like kind of component hacks where I will like make my dressing, cut up my kale, cut it up really small. That's another tip. I'll like cut it very, very finely. I actually like chiffonade it-ish. And so by that, I mean, I'll rip the stem out, stack it up, and then I'll try to like just stack it as much as I can and like really finely slice it with my knife so that I'm getting like pretty fine pieces. I'll make my dressing. I'll toss the 2 together with my hands, but I won't really massage. I'll just toss it really, really well. And I might let it sit for half an hour while I prepare the next part of my meal. Or maybe if I'm making it for lunch the next day, I'll just dress it, throw it in a Pyrex, throw it in the fridge, and then like dress and like top it with whatever other things the next day.
Lauren, this is a game changer. I am so glad I'm literally like, oh my God, this is why I like try to eat it immediately. And it's like, this is hard to eat.
It is. It totally is. You're like, I'm chewing a lot. I don't get it.
Am I a brontosaurus yet? I'm like trying to get through and I'm like, why am I doing something wrong? And it's like, because you're just eating it so fast. But I end up getting attracted to dino kale. And I feel like exactly what you're saying, where I could stack it well, so I could cut the stem. But then I'm learning there's like so many different varieties of kale.
Yes. I am also a fan of dino kale. Like that is our garden only has that. The curly, I find like, it ages a little worse. Like curly kale in the spring is really, really good. But as you go through the season...
Is that kind of what the standard one, if you get like, a bag at the grocery store, that's what the curly kale is? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And they're starting to have... I feel like more and more there's starting to be both varieties available at stores. But yeah, I would say I definitely see the curly kale more frequently. And that's fine if you're like cooking it down. You can't totally tell a difference. But I don't think it breaks down as well in a salad. Like if you're trying to do kale salads a lot more with curly kale, then massaging might be a better option. And that just means essentially like putting some salt and some oil on it and literally like massaging it with your fingers, like breaking down the fibers as much as you can. Then I really like to top it with, again, like pretty hearty stuff. So dressings I do, like I have a peanut dressing that is my favorite kale dressing ever. I think it was originally a Martha Stewart recipe maybe, but it's like peanuts and maple syrup and apple cider vinegar and oil. I don't remember in what ratios, but you just like puree it in your food processor till it's like this creamy peanut amazingness. And the peanuts are so like hearty that it really like it's enough to break down the kale and like balance the kale. And then you can throw just like a ton of other veggies in there. Like you could do carrots, you could do peppers, you could do radishes, kind of whatever you're feeling, whatever you have. All those things can be raw because again, you're going for this like very crunchy salad. That's probably my favorite kale salad ever. But like roasted squash and apple, those are like hearty things that you can throw on a kale salad and they can like stand up to it. Where like if you were to put a bunch of cups of like roasted squash on a lettuce salad, it's just going to wilt the salad and like kind of, it's going to fall apart so fast. That's why I like kale, is I can like add a ton to it and turn it into a meal pretty easily.
It's a strong character. We love strong characters. Okay.
Love strong characters.
Speaking of strong characters, winter squash. What are your favorite tips for cooking that?
Well, roasted always, just like absolutely always roasted for me. I did have grilled squash this last weekend at a friend had a fire, like a bonfire, and they roasted it over in like a cast iron skillet over the fire, and it got super charry and like really smoky, and that was very tasty. But I love to roast it, and then I usually, put it with olive oil, salt, and pepper, roast it, and then when there's like maybe 5 minutes like left in the roasting, I'll put some maple syrup on there. Occasionally you can do like some chili powder or some red pepper flakes or some like cinnamon or allspice. Like you can play with those like warming flavors, and it'll add this extra caramelization factor because you're adding the sweetener and keeping it roasting a little bit, and it'll bring out the sweetness in the squash. That is like my absolute go-to.
I'm getting so excited for fall.
It's fall. It's fall.
I'm like, yes.
Yes, we're ready. We made it. I also love like a squash soup though too. That is one of my standby soups in the fall and winter, is that like you can roast it. You don't have to. I usually roast again because I'm lazy. Then I don't have to peel it. I can just like roast the halves, get it really, really soft, scoop out the inside, throw it in a pot, and like make a soup out of it. Usually with like coconut milk and curry kind of flavors. I really, really love that kind of squash soup. It's so tasty.
I love spaghetti squash too. I feel like that's a good, easy one. You can scoop out some of that love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where do you find inspiration for developing your recipes?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think the reason I'm so into like eating local and eating seasonally is because I find so much inspiration just in like that alone. The second we decided to end our CSA farm, I like subscribed to a CSA immediately. I get a CSA share from my friend at Winterfell Acres. And like, I think the things that the farmer sends you together like become the inspiration for me in a certain sense. In winter, I get really uninspired. And I think a huge part of that is because like you're eating the same things day after day, but I don't have a CSA share every week. Like I don't have items coming directly to me because they're in season at the same time. And then I have to like figure it out. So I get a ton of inspiration just from like, okay, I've got like, I can't even think of an example, but I've got like fennel and cilantro and onions. And like, what am I going to do with those things? Oh, they came together. So they're probably going to taste good together. That's kind of a fun trick with like local seasonal eating, is that most things that are like ready at the same time taste pretty good together. And then you can start to just like riff and experiment with them. And I think you kind of get to know these staples too, where like, okay, there's these categories of food. Like there's slaws, there's salads, there's soups, there's grain bowls, there's casseroles. They like, you learn like these big categories, and then you get these ingredients each week and you start to like riff on them and play with them. And I get a ton of inspiration just from that.
Lauren, thank you so much for giving us some of your tips about how to cook efficiently, be creative, and eat healthy.
So happy to. So happy to. Thanks so much for having me.
That's Lauren Rudersdorf, local food writer with Edible Madison. She also blogs at Locally Grown with Lauren Rudersdorf and The Leek and the Carrot. Check out our show notes for links to her writing and a host of the recipes she mentioned.
That's all for today here on CityCast Madison. I'm Haley Sperling. If you enjoyed the show, why not share this episode with someone who loves kale? We'll be back tomorrow morning with more stories from around the city. Bye!